Hello everyone and welcome to Janet's Craft Corner. Today we are going to be making our sweet winter snowman ornaments. So we're going to start out with everything pinned out on our tape board, and we've pulled all of our colors that we need. Okay, so let you know about the colors. I have Look at Me blue and French blue. I have apple red, gray frost, Thicket, classic green, green whisper, pure orange, and then titanium white and pure black. So those are the colors that we have to work with today. And then on our tape board, we have, these are the white, although they've all got some black on them too. And these things are all white also. These things are black. This is the light gray. This is the two-tone blue. These are all red with some white here. These are orange. These are green. These are kind of a classic green. This is the minty green, and these are like a forest green. And I actually probably need a brown for their stems also. So let me grab that because I missed that one. Okay, so we're going to start with our white because that's always where you want to start. And we're going to mix it up a little. Not a lot though. We're going to do a little bit of sponge painting with our white, but mostly we're going to do it with a brush, because most of it is stuff that's just marking where things need to go. There's not a lot of actual stuff that needs to show through, because we're going to fill like all these little holes, all these little circles, these little pieces of coal we're going to fill with black. The mouth will need to keep open, the two little eyebrows, but those are all relatively straight lines, so we can use an X-Acto knife on those. And then this same way with this snowflake here. And then the two eyebrows there, we're going to fill them in with black also. So actually, the more I look at it, the less I'm not going to use any. I'm not going to use any sponge work. I'm going to do it all with the brush. So I'm just going to start on this one and work. I'm going to always work from the center of our piece to the outside edges so that we have as little overdraft on our edges as possible. I have some funny black things popping out there. It came out of those cut lines. That was weird. This actually is not white. I don't know why I started painting that white. It's blue. So I'm actually going to use a wet wipe and kind of take part of that off, because his body is blue. I'm positive of that. So his scarf goes there between them. I'm like, what goes between the two colors? That was what was bothering me, is I couldn't figure out what went between the two colors. His scarf goes between them, so I can probably go about this far down and I'll be safe. And then I'm going to turn and go the other direction with it so that it comes off the edge. Again, I'm going down a little ways. Up here, I'm going a little ways above where that line is, because that's going to be a brim of his hat, and so I'm safe. It's going to have something over the top of it. So I'm going to do this again. Give it a second kind of quick coat here, and then I'm going to go on to the next one, and then I'm going to come back and give it a third coat if it needs it. So this guy is basically white all down through here. He's got a black hat on, but it does have a brim, so I'm going to go within that brim area as my kind of line for where I want to have things painted up until, so that I can make sure that it goes up underneath that brim. And then again, I'm painting from the middle of my piece to the outside. This joy and the heart are both marks for where something is going to go, so it doesn't matter how well they show through, as long as I can see them enough to place the item that goes there. And then we've got a scarf over here, so we don't even have to come off that edge. We'll need to come off down to about here. Looks like that should cover where our scarf goes. So that gives us that guy, and we're going to give him a little second coat here. So we've got him a good coat on, and this is one of the little things you got to watch when you're doing painting. I came off of that one and went on to this one, and so I've got a little bit on my edge there, so I'm going to clean that with the wet wipe. This one, it's just the face that's white. The hat is black, and there is a brim, so we'll paint our face white there. Again, we're going to start in the middle, work our way out to the edges. We're going to work our way, so we're always coming off the edge of our piece. That's how we want to be. We want to always come off the edge so that we create as little edging as little trimming of our edges as we can possibly create by making sure we don't get a lot down on our edges. So there we go on that. And there's basically a second coat on that one too. Now with white, you got to kind of concern yourself with what the strokes look like. Like on this and all my strokes went that way, and I don't like that. So I want to kind of make my strokes go in a circle. Same way here, I kind of want them to circle up a little bit, but I got to be careful of my edges. And when we do the last coat on them here in a little bit, we'll clean that out. I'm going to then, with an X-Acto knife, I am going to clean out those areas that I want to keep clean so that I don't get the dried stuff down in them. I want it to still be a little bit wet when I clean them out. So this is just a snowflake basically that's kind of cut into the wood. Made up basically of 4 straight lines, so it's really easy to cut that out with the X-Acto knife, which is why I didn't bother to use a sponge on that. The eyebrows are the same thing. They're very straight lines. They're 2 little bitty straight lines, so get that. The mouth is a little more complicated. It's got a little bit of an arch to it, but it is still a single line. There's not a lot of detail to it, so I can get it to drop in there. Basically just put it into the edge and let it kind of follow the line that it is. And sometimes you hit a spot where you get it done when it goes, so you just go to the other edge and go back the other direction. I actually hit a spot this way too, so we'll be a little careful here. There we go, we got that part of the mouth. Next, I'm sticking to the tape down here. And then we'll get the long piece of the mouth, and I want to come in right there at that edge, and then just let my tip follow the line that's cut into the wood already. And again, you'll hit some spots that have a little bit thicker parts of the paint, and they'll want to slow down, but just keep going until you get to the edge. And there we go on those. And the rest of these are all just placement spots. Now these things are all also white on both the snow on the top here and the snow on the bottom here. I think those are big enough to use a brush on. I just have to be careful when I'm doing it. So that I'm kind of like I said, always trying to be going off of the piece that I'm working on, not coming on to the edges of it. That's one of the tricks to keeping your edges as clean as possible. In this piece, the thing is to make sure I keep those top little loops clean, because those are going to be harder to clean than anything else, harder to trim, because a marker will probably not fit up in those holes, so we'd have to go to the brush way of trimming those. And the marker is a whole lot easier than the brush. And I'm just kind of going back and getting a little bit of a second coat on them. In most cases, white needs 3 coats, but you got to be careful if you're putting them on too fast, because the third coat will end up just taking off most of the second and first coat. So you got to let it actually dry between those 2 coats. Between 1 and 2, it's not too bad, but once you get to the higher numbers, it tends to get pretty bad. And again, down here, we're going to try to move our way off of the piece all the way across the bottom here. And then do the same thing going across the top. Now I have a pretty large brush out here, and I'm actually going to try to kind of use it like a sponge, because I really just don't want to have to dirty up a sponge. I'm being lazy in some ways. These little treetop things are kind of easy, just kind of push the brush around on them. This is going to be a little more difficult, but we're still going to try it. Because like I said, I really don't want to get a sponge out. I have problems with I have fibromyalgia, and so I have problems doing the sponge sometimes. And today is one of those days, and so I'm really trying to avoid it. And then that top ornament also, or top snowflake also. And again, I want to try to come off of the center of my thing. So I'm working my way around it and working off of all these little edges. And with a sponge, you could just go straight down on it. And that's probably easier for most people. But with my fibromyalgia flaring today, that's not real easy for me. So we accommodate and we go with the brush that will work even though my fibro's flared. Okay, and then let's see, I didn't quite get that done there. Unless I do a really bad job up here, I won't trim these because these are little bitty and you can get it done with a brush. It's not impossible, as you're seeing. I'm going to go back and do a third coat on these pieces, all of the pieces that are across here. I am keeping that third coat somewhat light and making sure that I keep my brush moving in the directions that I want it to move. Like I said, I want to come off the piece, but I also want to make sure that if I have brush marks, they are brush marks that go in the direction I want them to go. These three little bitty pieces are the snow tips for the trees that go on the first snowman. Kind of has a snow globe style body, I guess. I guess that's what I would call that. We're going to go just keep working our way through these pieces. Make sure that we get enough of a coat on there that it really looks white, that we don't see that brown coming through from the wood color. And usually 3 coats of white will do that. And that's what we're working on right now, is our third coat on most of these areas. And like I said, I'm going to keep kind of trying to make that my strokes there somewhat rounded, and we'll have to refill it. We'll have to re-clean that guy out, and I knew that when I was doing it. But he just cleans out a whole lot better if you do him more than once. If you don't try to wait till the very end, because at the very end, some of those layers are very dry in there, and they'll not want to clean out if they're very dry. So that's why we try to get as many of them done in the middle, like we did today. And we'll just give him another coat across his body. And again, I'm not going to worry about these engraved marks down here because they are just placement marks for pieces. And so I just have to be able to see them enough to know where those pieces go. And then finally this guy, and again, we're looking at placement marks for drawing in, for painting in the black circles, and then the placement mark for the nose, none of which needs to show through heavily. It can show, I need it to show through a little bit so I can see what I'm doing when it comes to those areas, but not majorly. There, I think we got all of that done. Let's leave that until we get finished with our cleaning out here, just in case we end up out the side and we make a scratch somewhere that we have to fill in. Sometimes it jumps the track and then you gotta kind of go back and fill around it, but it's not very often that I have it do that. I mean, I get a really clean, as you can probably see. I'll hold it up for you in a second when I'm done, but I get a really clean line when I do these. In this one, because it's a snowflake and there's all these points where they all come together down here at this center point, I do get a little bit of a glob there, and I just work my way to get it out. And this one, because we've been through it once already and we're just going through it a second time, it's a little cleaner, so it's a little easier to get into it, get into that groove, and to stay in that groove. And I'm staying in the groove, and I'm leaving little pieces behind, so I'm going to go back and get as much as I can out of it. So I want it to look nice and clean when I'm done, once everything's dry. So I'll hold these up so you can kind of see how that looks. There you go. You can see how both the see the mouth and the snowflake. Okay, so now let's see. Let's go. So we are definitely done with our white. I think they all look like they're good enough. So now let's, oh, we have white down here, but we are not going to do that with that same big brush. We're going to do it with a smaller brush. So let's get a small brush to do that with. You could use a marker to do the stripes like this, but when it's a candy cane like this, I've never had trouble doing them, so I always use a brush. Like I said, you could use a marker, but just the best thing with a brush is Load your brush, not too much on it because you don't want it to spread too much on you. Make sure you've got a brush that is at least less than the stripe you're doing. And then just very gently pull it. And, you know, like I said, make sure you don't let it spread too much on you. These are thinner at the point here than they are on the outside edge. So you kind of got to pull along that line as you can. Makes it a little more difficult. Once you get to where they're the same size all the way through, you can usually go down between them. And then come back and get this side. Skip to this one. As you can see, these are not, they're not too hard to paint. As long as you have a brush that's the right size. If you don't have a brush that's the right size, then use a marker. Or if you feel like you get better control with a marker, use a marker. I have felt in the past like I got better control with a marker on some things. Oh, let's watch where we're putting our brush there. But I don't know. Candy canes have never been my issue, so I don't worry about it with them. And again, I'm following that same rule. Try to come off of my edges as much as possible. And it's especially important with the white, because the white will make lines that are really visible down our edges. Let's see, I went through and did half on that way, and then I'm going to turn my thing because I was having trouble getting my hand turned, so I'll turn my whole board so my hand doesn't have to do all the turning. Depends on how much turn I need sometimes. And then a little bit more paint. I'm going to do this one. And these are the ones that are harder because they are thinner and because they are on a bend. They are wider on the outside, then on the outside they're basically the same width as all the others, but then on the inside they become thinner and they're harder to do that way. But they're doable. Again, and you know, if you, like I said, if you use markers, I want to use a marker on that. I fully understand that thought. I debate every time I do it, so I really like the brush. Okay, so there's that white. So now then, let's see where we're going to go. I think we'll start doing one of the colors here. And that is a two-tone blue, but I need to look at my picture. And we'll do the darker of the two blues. And the dark blue goes here and it goes on this. So we'll do it first. The blue does not have to come all the way off the bottom here. You'll see that because that white piece, this piece, goes down there across the bottom of it to make kind of the bottom of the snow globe effect. And it doesn't quite have to go all the way up to where that white is because, like I said, there's a, this goes across, the scarf goes across there, and that's going to be there. And we've got some snowflakes there, again, on this one that we're going to want to be able to clear, but we'll be able to clear those with the X-Acto knife again. Doesn't probably have to come all the way out to that edge, but it's really hard to judge where it needs to come there, so I just always come out all the way to the edge because I know that if I come to the edge, I'm good enough. Whereas if I don't, then I don't know whether I got all of it or not. Again, I want to get my brush strokes kind of as clean as possible in here. And I do want them to kind of go in that little circular because it is a ball. And this is a color that usually I can get by with one coat with an extra few brush marks. So there takes care of that. And then we're going to want it on this also. But on this, we're going to have to use a smaller brush. So let's see if I can find another small one. This one's too small. There, that one's pretty good. So we're going to start on this one. And I'm just going to start. I mean, it doesn't really matter which one is light blue and which one is dark blue, honestly. Just start somewhere and start filling in. And I'm going to start at the bottom of this one and fill it in dark. And then basically every other stripe is the dark blue, so we're just going to keep going on that pattern. And like I did before, I think I'm probably going to do half of each piece and then move my, then turn my board around to do the other half because it's hard to move my hand in the right directions here. So I'm doing basically half of each stripe. In the middle, working my way out so that I do keep that brush going off the edges. Up here, you're gonna have a little bit of issue because it's kind of going along an edge. So just kind of I want to try to let it not drop down along that edge any more than absolutely necessary. Now this is going to lay up here, and so I think what we're going to have is we're going to probably be light blue there and dark blue there would be the best way to do it. So that's what we're going to do. And then that's going to be light blue. So this little piece here is going to be dark blue. I think that piece is all completely covered up, but I don't remember for sure. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to put an extra row of dark blue around it and down on here, just to make sure that it gets fully covered and we don't have anything showing that's not been painted. I think I'll be fine there, but... And on this down here, because we've got it, this is going to lay over the top of this. I don't have to worry about my edge on this side. I just have to worry about my edge on this side. So I'm going to start over here and just work my way across. And I'm jumping because of the fact that I've got too much paint on this brush. And so I was getting a little bit of a ridge, and so I needed to get some of the paint off. And then again, we're going to have this down here be the dark blue. And it doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't matter which ones are light blue and which ones are dark blue. Just go with it and see what you end up with. But again, I do not really need to do second coats. This color covers pretty good. So I'm just kind of going, making sure my brush strokes are going in the right directions. And then I'm going to, and I've got a kind of a little edge there. I'm going to move that out. And then I'm going to turn my board so I can make my hand go in the right direction for the other areas that need to be done. I still need to do half of this one. And that seems to be most of our dark blue. Put a little bit of the light blue over here and we'll just fill that in also. Now this light blue is kind of a gray blue. Maybe we'll just do that other guy's scarf in it too, I think. The more I think about it. But let's first start by going this way. And again, I've got too much paint on my brush. I didn't unload my brush enough, which is why I'm moving down to here to put some of it down before I come back up and clean that one up a little bit. Because I got way too much paint on my brush for that little bitty spot up there. And that's something I gotta watch. I'm really bad about that. And you'll need to... Depends on you whether you are good at that and are good at offloading your brush and getting it right, or if you need to be like me and you gotta figure it out as you go. See, I'm having to spread that up that way because I've got way too much paint there. But we got it to work. There we go. And this time we'll be smarter. We'll clean that off a little bit. And again, this is going to cross over. We don't have to worry about these side pieces. It's not going to matter where that goes on this side. It doesn't actually go off the edge of the paint, so we're going to just paint from that edge to this edge. Or from the, again, inside edge to outside edge. And now I went the opposite direction, didn't get enough paint. And you know, one of the hardest things with this, just know how much your brush spreads. I've used these brushes many, many times, so I know how much they spread out and how much I got to worry about them spreading. But if you haven't used your brush before on cutting in stripes like this, just pay a lot of attention to how much it spreads out so you don't get too close to that edge. Because if you get too close, it'll spread out over that edge, and that's not what you want. And this is a light enough color. I do need to go back and put a kind of second coat on it. So I'm going to do that while I'm still going this direction. And then when I turn it around, I will do first and second coats going the other way. See there, my brush went a little too far out, and it's because I was trying to squeeze out a little bit of color. And I'm just going to use my finger and clean it off a little bit, and it'll be fine. I mean, this is not, doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to be fine. You won't even notice it when we're all done. And I'm going to again turn my board so that I can get to these sections and do them going the best direction for me, so that I don't have to twist my arm too much. I'm doing these in the middle of summer, and it is hot, hot, hot outside. All these little snowmen make me kind of want winter to get here, but I'm sure that once it gets here, I'll want it to go away too. It's kind of the way it works with seasons, right? The one you've got's never the one you want at that time. Okay, and then I said we're going to do this other one in that color, but I'm not going to use this little bitty brush. I'm going to get one that's a little bigger, not a whole lot bigger, but a little bit bigger to use on it. I laid the other one there just in case I look over and decide I need to touch that up with something. Oh yeah, I like that color. Saw me going along that edge instead of off that edge, and I went right down over it. So see, there's reasons why you do this the way you're supposed to. This is one of the hardest places to do because you got to come off that edge but not end up going on this edge here. So I got it. You gotta be very careful as you're doing that. And now that I've got all of that done, I'm actually going to go back through, and I didn't put any extra paint on my brush, and I'm just making sure that my brush strokes go the direction they should rather than the off the edge direction that they were going. But since I have very little paint on my brush, it's not likely that it'll go down along the edges there. And then that does have a section what I need to get clean out. There are two lines on this that kind of help separate where the pieces are, make it look like you've tied them together, and I need to clean those two lines out. Okay, and then these two snowflakes that I was worried about over here, they did fine. So we're just going to let them be the way they are. I'm not real pleased right there. We got a little bit of a hump. Okay, that's all my touch up probably for those. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now let's see. We're going to do our orange. We'll get our pure orange out and we'll get us a little bit. We don't need very much for those. I mean, we just got 3 little bitty. Basically dab down on them. You want to keep your sponges unloaded as much, so you want to offload most of your paint. So you just got a little bitty layer of paint on it, and then go up and down with light pressure. And because the sponge method puts such a thin coat of paint on it, we can go back over. This orange does require usually 2 coats when we're using it in sponge painting, at least. When you use a brush, it probably doesn't, but I don't use a brush with it very often because the biggest thing I use for it is carrots, and they always have these little details. To be completely honest, although I'm sure fall stuff's coming up, we'll have some orange in that, some pumpkins and things that we need to do. I'm just kind of going back over them a few times to get a little bit more of the paint on there. I am paying attention. If I should start to pull paint off, I will obviously quit, because I'm not trying to pull paint off, I'm trying to add paint too. But this, like I said, it dries so quick. The acrylics dry so quick. That's not usually a problem. Okay, there we go. Takes care of that. Now then, red. Okay, our red, we have quite a bit of red down here, but none of it's huge. So I think I'm going to try to use that same brush on all of it. But I'm going to first of all do the part that's stripes, because I want my brush to be as clean, the edges as clean as possible. I don't want to get to where it's got so much paint in it it's spreading out funny. And like I said, I'm going to try to do the stripes first, and then I'm going to use the same brush for those other things, because they're not thick enough for me to. Stripes, we are going to do the same thing we did with the white. I almost always paint my white first and then my red. In the case of this, I find that if I make mistakes with the white, the colors can usually cover them up. But if I make mistakes with the colors, the white is not usually enough to cover it up. So I do my white first. If I get any mistakes with that, then I'm okay. If I make mistakes with the color, in this case the red, then I'll have to go back and touch up my white. But I know for me, this is the start of my ornament painting. I do go through a lot of ornaments each year, not just for me personally, but I also, since I sell what I paint, you know, that's a very, ornaments are a very popular thing, so I go through lots and lots of ornaments each year. So I paint a lot of ornaments, but I'm trying to show you at least one of each kind, so you get some ideas. I am. Ornaments are great because I mean, we can make these any way we want. We could have made this a green and white candy cane. We could have made it red and pink instead of red and white. There are lots of options for what you can do. Plus, you know, you could have made his scarf could have been any color you wanted. Same with the word joy, it can be pretty much any color you want. I've seen them before with even where they make the hats blue instead of black. Keep them kind of like a denim look. Lots of things you can do, and you can make them your own. Okay, then all of these other pieces are red, and like I said, this is, I would normally use probably a bigger brush on most of this stuff, but I think I'm just going to use this one and kind of just make do, because I don't like to dirty up more brushes than I have to. Kind of is my biggest nemesis, is I'm constantly running out of brushes, because I just keep moving down the line of things to do. You'll notice I'm trying to use it on bigger things when I have a lot of paint on my brush, and then move over to the littler things. And that's just because I want my edges to stay as clean as possible. So if I use it when it's loaded a lot on the littler things, I'll get more of an edge because I can't control where my brush is going at all times. So that's why we're kind of doing it that way. Red is one of those that covers usually in one coat, which is nice. I don't like the colors that make me do 3 and 4 coats. They're my least favorites. I like one coaters. I like to keep moving and feel like I'm accomplishing something. This also has a little snowflake there. I will paint it and see if it clears itself or if I have to come back in and clear it. You know, those blue ones cleared themselves. It was nice. We'll see. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Okay, there's our reds. Okay, now we have 3 different greens. These 2 are kind of a brighter green, kind of a classic, what I would call a classic green. This is a minty green, and these are a forest green. So they're big enough though that I don't need to use the sponge. Now this one does have a vein down the middle of each of the leaves, but you'll see here in a minute once I get this fully painted and most of the paint off this brush. And I'm going to actually move over here for a little bit because I have a lot of paint with the brush. Kind of got too much paint again. Is this a repeating record here? In some ways, yes. It's one of the consistent problems I have. I get too much paint on my brush. Not real good at unloading my brush when I should. But I manage. And then now that my brush does not have much paint on it, I can sit it kind of sideways and go down that line and get that guy to clear out without having to even use the X-Acto knife. The red is going to come over this area here, but just in case I don't get it quite perfectly centered, I'm going to go ahead and cover all that, because especially the edges, if it doesn't quite center perfectly, you know, it would have been, the greenery would have been still behind it, so it'll look fine. And this one, like I said, I'm using a minty green. It's called Green Whisper. I love this color. I think it's one of the prettiest colors I've seen in a while. Just like the color. Like when I can figure out ways to use it. So we're going to use it here on the Joy, and we're going to use, again, the sponge painting method because, why? Because it's thin parts. Okay, come on out. There we go. That's kind of thick. You know, those are thin pieces and I don't want it to go down, so I have to trim it. So I'm gonna show you this because this one's a dark enough color that you can see it. You can see just how much paint is on there. You know, when you first dip it in, you get a whole lot of paint on that individual sponge. You can kind of see the clumps of paint. So you want to put it on your palette. You want to put it down on your palette around the edges of your color and just keep patting it until you get to where you've not got nearly as much paint. And this one's kind of got a grid across the sponge, but you can see there's like almost no paint on there. And that's where we want to be. So we want, because we don't want it going down our edges. And then we're going to use really light padding, light pressure as we go down through here so that it doesn't go down our edges, so that we get as clean an area as possible, because these are hard to trim. These kind of, when they have these little bitty letters, these little bitty lines, words or lines, whatever, they're hard to trim. You can't really trim them well. And so your better bet is to not need to trim, to get a very small amount down the sides of any of these. And that's how you do that. You keep your sponge as unloaded as possible and you use light pressure. And it works wonders. It's, you know, sometimes I think, oh my goodness, why wouldn't it go all the way down the side there? My sponge is kind of going down the side. It doesn't. It works wonders. So there we go. We've got that painted, that pretty light green. And then I think all we have left may be our black. Nope. Oh, nope. We got our 3 trees down here. About forgot them. And we could do them in the classic green like we have here. Or I'm going to go with a darker, almost forest green. It's called Thicket. It's kind of a really dark foresty green. It's not quite as dark as some of the forest greens I see. But it's nice color. And I'm just going to use a little brush. And this is a dark color, so I don't have to worry as much about coming off my edges because they won't show as much on the black. But I do try to still be as careful as possible and that I move from the center out to the edges. And that's also the way your tree branches are flowing, so that's going to make any of the brush strokes that you might get left do that also. And then this right edge right there, I just got to be careful that line where I need to have a trunk that's brown. Some people just go ahead and paint their trunk green too. I figure if I've got a line, I might as well paint the trunk brown. So I do paint my trunks brown. But I like this color. It's kind of a dark, almost a piney, you know, it gives me the look of the pine tree. Whereas the brighter green doesn't quite do it as well for me. All those edges done. And this paint is a little thin, so it's giving me a little bit of brush stroke, but that's okay because I'm going in the direction of my branches, so it'll be fine. It'll just look like branches coming out there. You know, just look like the division between the branches. Okay, now then, the brown for the trunk. And, you know, very small brush, very small area. I just push my brush up against that line there and kind of come down. And brown goes on good enough that I don't have to do multiple coats, so that works. Okay, and last but not least is our black. Now we have some black that's down on these pieces. I'm actually going to use a marker for that part, but I am going to do quite a bit of black painting also. So I'm going to get my black out, and then I'm just going to start painting these areas black. And we've got the brims of all 3 of our hats. Remember, that's where we had to made sure our white went up to our brim. Well, this is our brim that's going to go on top there, so it's going to cover that edge where we've got a kind of an uneven edge where our white is. This one after you through the first one there, and actually, nope, they're not quite in order. And you know, you want to still, even though the black doesn't really matter, you want to make sure you don't get any clumps off the edges of your black ones. So I still work, you know, it's just habit, I guess, that I work from the middle of the piece out, even when it's a color that I don't have to worry about. That way it's a habit I have and I don't have to worry about it. But once I get that done, I am going to kind of go back and make sure that my brush strokes go the way I want them to. And again, from the middle of my piece out, I still have plenty of paint on that brush. And then the bottom half up from the middle out. And then worry about my brush strokes a little bit. And then we're going to paint their hats. And again, we want to make sure we come down far enough that we're into that area that's covered by the brim. After that, it doesn't matter. We just kind of give it a coat. We do want to be as clean as possible around these little pieces up here, because these little holes, they're used for hanging or ornament. They'll get filled just a little bit. They'll get filled up with the paint if you aren't careful with how you go around them. And I'm worrying about brush strokes as I go, because black, for some reason, is notorious for bad brush strokes. There we go. Now we're going to do the next guy in one line. He gets the same treatment. And make sure you're coming down at least far enough to cover where that brim covers. Make sure that you're being careful around the hole that's created up there. And do the same thing on the other half of the hat. And then clean your brush strokes up. Pretty simple process for the black. And black, like I said, black is notorious though for brush strokes, so make sure you clean your brush strokes up. And then finally, this guy, he's got his brim, and then he also has a red piece, a little trim piece, like a ribbon. So we just have to come down within that area. We don't have to come all the way down to where the brim was. Okay, I think we have everything done that we need. Now, I'm a little pickier with my ornaments than anything else on trimming. And like, I've got a couple of little places. Oh, wait a minute. We got to fill up. I know what we got to do. We got to do our eyes and stuff. Like I said, I like to use a marker for this section. I'm priming my marker over here. And I just very lightly, especially on these eyebrows, if you're very careful about being light, it'll actually kind of fill in between those two groove marks. And you won't have to shape them. And then our little round dots, I mean, they're just round. Remember, these are pieces of coal, so if you go a little outside your lines, it really doesn't matter. They represent pieces of coal. Let's be a little bit clearer what we're doing there. So, you know, I'm not being really careful about making sure I stay within my lines, because a piece of coal is not perfectly circular. And as I did these two, I noticed that I forgot to clean out his eyebrows the second time we went. And get his eyebrows real quick. And like I said, it's harder once you've got the paint is dried, but it's not impossible. You just gotta press it a little harder. There we go. Okay. And we have lots of little spots where we're filling in circles here. And again, if you're careful with it, you can keep those circles pretty good. And like I said, I don't worry about them too much, especially like the little bitty ones. But they're not hard to keep clean, because they won't go outside the lines if you're careful. If you don't go quite up to the line, they'll fill out to the line on their own as they flatten, but they won't go outside the line. You can do this with a very small brush, but I like a marker for these kind of areas more. Like I said, you can paint these whole ornaments with a marker if you wanted to. Now for trimming, there's not much to be done, but I noticed that on this one, this edge kind of got messy. Can you see where that edge is kind of messy? So I'm just going to run with my marker pointed towards the front, with the barrel of the marker towards the back, marker pointed towards the front. I'm just going to run my marker along those edges, and it'll cover up any of that white that is coming just down on that edge a little bit. And more importantly, it's jagged. It's not even. If it was an even layer, it wouldn't even be as bad, but it's kind of jagged because I wasn't as careful as I could have been with my brush. And that, like I said, this is something I probably would have done originally with a sponge, except that my fibromyalgia is bothering me today, so we're doing it with a brush. We did it with a brush. So there's that one. Other than that, I don't think I need to touch up, and I need to be a little bit careful. My dots are still kind of wet. So I'm going to start down here and pulling pieces off, and then I'll come back and get those bigger pieces. And then I'm going to start piecing it together. And this is, I normally would glue at this point. I always, there's no almost to it, I always lay it out before I glue it, just to make sure that I didn't lose a piece. I didn't forget something. I didn't paint something the wrong color. Whatever else you can think of that I might have done wrong, because I've probably done all of it at some point in time. So I do lay them out right before I glue, and I'm not going to stay on here and glue all of them for you, but I will show you how they lay out, and then I will glue a couple pieces so you can see how that works. So let's get this guy off without touching the middle where the dots are. Same way with this one and with this one. So let's start laying our pieces out here. Obviously our trees go here, and so does our white piece that gives us our snow down here. So that part's easy. Laying that part's out is easy. Okay, there's that tree. These two trees have got little notches and edges, so you can tell which side they go on. This one goes on this side because he's got a notch on that side, where they fit in next to that other one. And then this one has a notch there. He goes on this side. There we go. And then his brim looks like this. And then, like I said, on him, he has a red stripe. So we're going to put that stripe here. There we go. And let's see. I think he's the one that has the snow on his little brim here. And he has this snowflake on his thing. And then looking at making sure I get the right one and the right snowman. This is his nose. Oh, they need their snow caps, don't they? The little tops to the trees. And I'm going to use if I can find one. I am going to use a pair of tweezers to place these because they are really fun to place. So we'll place them on top of there. Yeah, even with the tweezers, I'm not getting it, am I? If the glue was on them, they'd stick. Then that would not be okay. It would be fine, but like I said, I normally would put the glue on them and use the tweezers to place them, and they would be perfectly placed. They're not quite perfectly placed when I do it this way. But you can get the idea of what that one looks like. Okay, now then, let's see. Where do we go from here? This guy, this goes here. This is his nose. This is his brim. He has the little holly leaf there, and then see the holly berries go down onto his hat, onto his brim there. Kind of see how that goes. And he has this. See, I coughed and those guys rolled off. You got the gist there, didn't you guys? He gets the joy, and he gets the other half of this. Okay, and then this guy, he gets a brim, and he gets our candy cane hat, our candy cane heart. So you can't even tell what I'm talking about. And he gets this little piece of greenery, kind of goes like that. This goes on him. And let's see, this carrot goes here, and then I have a couple pieces I didn't get in places, right? Well, did you realize that this looked funny? Well, it's because this wasn't there. That covers up those edges, doesn't it? And then this goes there. I bet that heart, I know where the heart goes. That heart goes right there. So there's what they look like. I'm doing the best I can with these little pieces that are not wanting to stay on there. But there's what the three look like. I will try to pick them each up for you here for just a second so you can see them close. This one will be the hard one. We may lose those as soon as we start. See, we're going to lose them before that point. Okay, you got one sitting on there. That's about all you're going to get right now. Since I don't have glue on the backs of them, they're not going to stick and they won't stay there. There's what number 1 looks like with the 3 treetop tips. Here is what number 2 looks like. This is the Joy Snowman. That one's the Tree Snowman, by the way. This is the Joy Snowman. And then this one is the Peppermint Heart Snowman. And so I'm going to use him for my sample, and I'm going to show you just how to do a couple of pieces here. I use Precision Art Glue. It's called Art Glitter Glue. You can kind of see it there. You can see what I use. I get it from Amazon. If you get it from Amazon, the 8-ounce bottle, there's one that comes with 3 little Pixis bottles, so you can, and a funnel, so you can put it in the 3 bottles and have the little bitty tips. That's what I use. It does come with a, there is a 2-ounce bottle that comes with a tip on it, and it does a little, it doesn't do bad either, but I use so much of it, I use the 8-ounce bottles. And these don't do bad as long as you remember to not let them clog up. That one's not clogged. Okay, so we're going to just put a little bit, and we really don't need a lot of glue. So on this guy, we're just going to put glue, or kind of around his edge, just a really thin line of glue around his edge. This glue does dry clear, but you want to watch and make sure you don't get any clumps coming out, because the clumps will show. So that's, I mean, see, that's just how, that right there's how you glue it. And it's not, they're not hard to glue. I'm not going to do many more pieces here. And then you just want to make sure you line up your edges as best as possible, or line them up with the indentations that are in the thing. And the one thing I like about this glue is it will move a little bit for you for about 5-10 seconds, so you can get it all lined up easily, and then you don't have to worry about it. But we'll put this back on here so you can see what they look like. And there we go. That's all there is to the snowmen. And I hope that you enjoyed this video, and that you'll come back later to see all the other ornaments that release, since this is one of the first weeks we're doing. So